Valerie Gordon, and 10 board members. And 10 board members. We are a group of professionals who work in different roles in the evaluation field in the Caribbean. Some members live in the region, some members live outside of the region. But their common purpose is to contribute to regional development through evaluation activities. When we work for the CAI, however, we work as volunteers. This afternoon, we have a mixed set of panelists to present on the topic, building a cadre of professionals for post-pandemic Caribbean. We'll be hearing the perspectives of regional UE lecturers, as well as the perspective of Professor Scriven. We're very honored to have him. He's from Claremont University in the USA. And we will also have the perspective of Dr. Candice Morkel from a university in South Africa. Her organization did a study among the African universities about the quality of the programs they have for evaluation education. So we will begin with Dr. Scriven. MIchael Scriven, I will stop sharing, Nicole, so you can allow Dr. Scriven to share his presentation. MIchael Scriven is a professor of psychology at Claremont Graduate University, and he's the co-director of the new Claremont Evaluation Center. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees from the Honors School of Mathematics at Melbourne University in Australia. He pursued a doctorate in philosophy at Oxford and was recently awarded an honorary doctorate in education from Melbourne University. His 50 years of teaching has been in departments as chairs of mathematics, philosophy, psychology, the history and philosophy of science, law, evaluation, education, and as a university professor. Most of this was done at the universities of Minnesota, Indiana, California, Berkeley, Western Australia, and Auckland, as well as Swarthmore, Harvard, San Francisco, and of course, he's currently at Claremont. His 450 plus publications, more than 450, have been mainly in the fields of his appointments and in computer science, informal logic, cosmology, international philanthropy, and technology studies. He has served on the editorial or advisory boards of more than 40 scholarly journals and was elected president of the American Evaluation Association and the American Educational Research Association. And he's a fellow of the Center of Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences at Stanford, a Whitehead Fellow at Harvard, and a fellow of the Australian Academy of the Social Sciences. His recreational efforts include rowing for Melbourne University and the Oxford University Trial 8, membership in the Frisbee Hall of Fame, and sports car racing. Although recently, the emphasis has been more on bird watching, technology studies, and knife collecting. Dr. Scriven is one of the pioneers in the field of evaluation. Annually, the Western Michigan University calls for applications for the MIchael Scriven Dissertation Award for outstanding contribution to evaluation theory, methodology, or practice. This is open to doctoral students in any discipline from any institution who has successfully completed and defended an evaluation-related doctoral dissertation. In 2010, I was the recipient of this award. I value it highly, and I remember the joy it brought to the College of Education at Kent State University in Ohio. Dr. Scriven, I now invite you to share your knowledge and experience with us.
Dr. Scriven, you need to unmute your microphone.
Okay, can you hear this now?
Excellent. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you for those kind words. They were very long and not written by me, but I can't deny that they're mostly true, though they're taken so long that I'll hardly have time to speak, because I don't want to be everybody's favorite awful person for being the first speaker and taking more than his allotted time. So let's see if we can compress a lifetime of work into 15 minutes. What I'm going to do is based upon the idea that I think the most important content of any pre-service or in-service training program for evaluators in the Caribbean is an overview of the real nature of evaluation as a discipline. I've spoken and written about this about evaluation as a transdiscipline, and I've now developed that view further, and this is my first opportunity to put that forward personally. So I'm very honored that I should have been invited to join you in the Caribbean. The point of view about the nature of evaluation that I'm going to present today is extremely important, because if it's true, which everything depends upon in what I'm going to say, then it alters the whole attitude towards evaluation that people should share as part of their practice in the research and teaching of that subject. So I want people to feel that their view of evaluation affects their view of their own worthwhile nature and of the value of their work, and makes them feel that they're part of a remarkably important discipline, a almost uniquely important discipline, and for reasons that are not obvious at first sight. After all, in the last part of the 19th century, the great days of mathematical physics, when the development of gravitational theory and electromagnetic theory were at their peak in their early days, magnificent mathematical theories covering all activities throughout the entire universe, at least as far as we know, leaving out black areas for the moment. And that is something which made it impossible to regard evaluation, the determining of the merit or worth or significance of any activity, scientific or not. You couldn't treat that business about good and bad and better and worse as if it was any more than a mere matter of taste, because it couldn't possibly be reduced to mathematical terms. And that was the absolute requirement of a good science at that point. Well, as the century turned into the 20th century, people started two movements. One was a final desperate movement to convert evaluation into a mathematical science. An outstanding example of the energy and ingenuity put into that effort was the so-called MOUT effort, standing for MAUT, the multi-attribute utility theory. And it was a very interesting attempt to reduce all of evaluation to a mathematically calculable task, but it unfortunately didn't work. So that was one movement in the early 20th century. Another movement was a more prosaic one, started by the people in education, mainly because I suspect that they were really living in a world where practical decisions were constantly obliged to be made in determining the content of curricula and the fate of the many staff members, teachers, and others, as well as the fate of a very large number of students, was all dependent upon the judgment of the senior officers in the administration and the researchers that they read and invited in for discussions. Well, those researchers were not able to reduce evaluation theory to mathematics, but they could do some practically useful things. And what began then, in parallel with the last gasp of the mathematicians trying to take over evaluation, was the effort to try to say what there could be done in a systematic, logical way within evaluation, even if you couldn't get completely mathematical about that. And what could be done seemed to some of the smart people in educational research, led by Dan Stufflebeam, to be beginning with the identification of all the relevant considerations for determining the merit of a particular thing that you wanted to evaluate, such as a particular curriculum, style of teaching, teaching research, and student achievements. Now, that was a very interesting move. Of course, it was a long way from getting mathematics in, but it was a step towards practical common sense and getting all the relevant considerations in, which should be coming into a discussion of the relative merit of, for example, one curriculum or another. So it was a step forward, though not down the path towards mathematical science, but it was an important step, and we made further steps down that path in the years to come. Well, I'm going to go on a little bit about some of the details in that development and stress the fact that you don't need the mathematics in order to be better off by using a very careful approach which allocates importance of each of the criteria that you think are relevant, allocates that importance qualitatively, if not quantitatively. You certainly can say that some of these considerations are more important than others, and perhaps even that some of them are essential and some of them are minor importance. And that is a long step from tossing a coin to make your decisions. It's a long step towards the beginning of systematic evaluation. And it's an important step in teaching anybody something about evaluation. You've got to get them used to that procedure of identifying all the relevant characteristics that bear on the merit in some degree or in a very great degree of the consideration that you're trying to evaluate. So we want then to begin by talking about some of the distinctions that I have talked about indirectly and see if we can get down to the basic point. Let's cut to the chase and skip the jargon for the time being. What am I saying about evaluation in English? or for that matter, Spanish or French, if we happen to have bilingual people there, which I'm hearing is going to be paid considerable respect in next year's meeting. What I'm saying in plain English is that the governing discipline in all disciplines, the ruling discipline, is that it is evaluation. Evaluation turns up whenever you're interested in establishing anything about the superiority of this or the inferiority of that approach, or anything about the historical significance of one of these developments, or anything about the money worth or the time worth of any of these approaches, all of which considerations enter our everyday practice in education all the time. And so what I'm saying is that the study of how those considerations and all the specific narrower ones that bear on the importance of a curriculum, for example, the native language of the students or the majority of students that are being taught and their background in other subjects. All of these things are part of what must be brought in. And what we're saying is that the procedures that is coming in must follow the rules of evaluation. And evaluation is basically a branch of logic. It's a branch of logic of a peculiarly sophisticated kind, too sophisticated to be subjected to full mathematical treatment, but not so sophisticated that we can't do it much better by being very careful and thorough about our approach and doing what we can to indicate relative importance of the considerations that we find to be relevant when expressed in terms of qualitative weights, such as very important, very slight importance. So the important bottom line here is that if we do that, and if we keep working on that by developing this subject evaluation within the framework of logic, which it has to follow to be a discipline at all, then we will find that we can greatly improve the success of the decisions that we make based on evaluation. Now, we're a long way from having reached the point where we're doing a reasonably satisfactory amount of reasonably good evaluation of the things that we're interested in evaluating from the students' work in this class for this term all the way through to a new mathematical curriculum. But we're on the way, and we've made a lot of developments which we can teach students a good deal about in the course of training programs in evaluation. And that's what I'm focusing on. And I'm telling you all that according to my view of things, that you begin by saying you're about to learn something about the one and only dominating discipline, which is absolutely crucial to evaluating anything in any discipline. There's just one discipline that helps with that, and that discipline is evaluation, which is a subclass of logic in general, and is something which we can do quite a lot to improve our use of. what has been happening a good deal is that when there's any evaluation, it is done using evaluators who are chosen by the people who are running the program that we're going to be evaluating, and are chosen rather carefully as people that we see from the record are very friendly towards the programs that we, in fact, are evaluating. In other words, biased in favor of them. That's a very poor beginning because it immediately brings in the likelihood of a favorable bias. We need more work by evaluators who are hired for their technical skills, not their prior favoring of the program, or for that matter, but non-favor. If they're hired because they're known to be quick guns who will shoot down the program, then that won't be any more promising for the truth than hiring those people that are overly positive from the get-go. Okay, so now, having said that evaluation is a transdiscipline, what do we mean? We mean simply that it applies across the disciplines, all of them, the sciences, and then disciplines like history and the law, which are not sciences, but are proceeded with in a logical way. So they're within the logic framework, even if they're not sciences by subject matter. And that means that they have to obey the logic of evaluation as well as the fundamental logic of Aristotelian syllogisms and their developments into recent years. Now, that is what transdisciplinary means, and the logic of evaluation is something which you have to work hard at developing, beginning with skills in critical thinking and concise expression of criticisms, and the appreciation and practical use of criticism as a way to improve, instead of treating it as an implicit enemy because it regards your program as less than perfect, in need of improvement. That should be just a way to get the program made better by revision, not treated as alien attacks. Okay, so now, how does this evaluate?
Dr. Scriven,
Yes,
you are maybe 1 minute more?
1 minute more.
Yeah.
I only have about 30 minutes more, so I'll bring it down to 1. The most important thing that we need to tell the beginning students, apart from how important, crucially important, the whole business of evaluation is in the structure of any discipline where you're interested in drawing evaluative conclusions. We must also get across to them an indication of how the roots of evaluation are also found in the operation of everyday disciplines. So it's not as if evaluation comes in from outer space or from some academic desk. It is a subject which is part of the business of practical disciplinary investigation. So, for example, experimental sciences are constantly asking themselves whether these sciences are meeting the standards of validity that are enforced when an evaluation is done to see if these results should be treated seriously. So this is not an alien subject. It's just a distillation of the essence of quality throughout the subject. So its roots are in logic and scientific method, where that's appropriate, or in the case of the non-scientific disciplines, of which there are many. Think about your competitive sports, for example, then you will need to move towards non-scientific activities, but there are plenty of those which obey very rigid rules governing playing them and engaging in them, and we bring those to bear in determining merit, worth, and significance. So it's time for me to wrap up, and I'll just finish off by saying that one of the most important and interesting issues about evaluation at the moment, a fighting scene, a tough battleground, is where does ethics fit in? And I'll just give you my conclusions because I can't give you the reasons in -5 seconds. But my conclusions are, I think this is new. I have been able to prove that systematic application of the logic of evaluation will force you as a logically reasoning person to adopt ethical points of view, to become at least partly unselfish, and to give up at least partly your egotistical point of view when judging the merit of alternative options that you possess. So ethics has a crucial, almost universal role in evaluation. And the Caribbean is a place where the history of unethical behavior on a large scale, that is a national scale, is a very familiar experience, at least from people's recent history and early history, if somewhat less so in some places in today's history. I hope there'll be more of that, and I hope to be giving you more reasons for making sure, my last really important thought in English, which is that we must teach moral analysis as a serious subject as part of serious evaluation. Hope that gives you something to think about. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scriven. What resonated with me, do what you can do to show relevance and importance, whatever in logic that you will apply when you do your evaluations, that what evaluations provide is a distillation of the essence of the quality of what is before you, the phenomenon before you, that you should be able to validate whatever results you get. You know, there should be some high validity to it. I like the especially because we do a lot of evaluations around at-risk communities and vulnerable people, that there has to be, that if we apply evaluation principles systematically, we will automatically shift to having a more ethical approach in the way we do things. And of course, that moral analysis and understanding must be the basis of all of that. So thank you very much, Dr. Scriven. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're not hearing you, Lenise.
No, it's not.
Can we now? Okay, great. I want to go ahead and introduce our regional lecturers from the 3 campuses We have with us today Dr. Persaud, Dr. Delisle, Dr. Gomes, and Dr. Bailey. So Dr. Persaud is a lecturer in evaluation at the University of the West Indies in Barbados since 2007. She teaches primarily at the graduate level and served as the program coordinator for the Masters in Project Management and Evaluation from 2008 to 2017. She holds a BSc in Accounting, First Class Honors, and an MSc in Project Management and Evaluation with distinction, both awarded by the UWI. She has a PhD from Western Michigan University. She also holds the Canadian Certified General Accounts Professional designation. She has a Gold Award and a Chartered Professional Accountants Professional designation as a CPA. Her research interest focuses on promoting and building evaluation culture in the region. She has several publications in reputable journals and 2 co-authored books, Nuts and Bolts of Research Methodology, from conceptualization to write-up, and the role of monitoring and evaluation in the UN 2030 SDGs agenda that will be released in later this month. She also has a single-authored book on evaluation, Strengthening Evaluation Culture in English-Speaking Commonwealth Caribbean, a guide for evaluation practitioners and decision makers in the public, private, and NGO sectors. Dr. Persaud, thank you and welcome. She's a strong member of the CEI, and we look forward to her presentation.
We're not hearing you, Nadini.
So I've turned off my video because I have some internet connectivity issues here. So thank you very much, Lenise. It is indeed a great pleasure to be a panelist on one of CEI's panels for gLOCAL Evaluation Week. My presentation will take a slightly different format from my colleagues at the other UWI campuses, in that I will first discuss the competencies that evaluators need for a successful career in this profession. I think that examining the skill domains is important for new course development as well as course revisions. After I've completed that, I will take you on a brief tour of what the Cave Hill campus offers. And this will be followed by a brief review of the, I will provide some guidance on the skills that are needed to function as a competent evaluator. I will then review what I've been doing over the last 10 years to build and promote an evaluation culture in the region. And I will conclude my presentation with some thoughts on the adequacy of evaluation in the region. Now I'm going to start my presentation by looking at the competencies that evaluators need. The American Evaluation Association and some other well-established FOPEs have already done substantial work in this area. Therefore, there's really no need to reinvent the wheel. As you will note, the AEA's competency framework is divided into 5 domains, namely professional competence, methodology, context, project planning and management, and interpersonal skills. The framework is available free of cost on their website and goes into more detail about the specific competencies needed for each of the 5 domains. Although the AEA competency framework is indeed very good, I found that there were certain skills that are necessary but not included in that framework. I also perceive a competency framework for professional evaluation practice as being grounded in strong ethical and professional standards. In other words, given the culture of our region, I see ethics acting like a heart pulsing into all the other domains. This is not by any means to suggest that the AEA framework does not also focus on ethics. However, my proposed framework looks slightly different. It mirrors many of the elements of the AEA competency framework I see evaluation as multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary, with ethics as the foundation of everything that evaluators do, pulsing into the domains of professional competencies. Interpersonal competencies, context-specific and situational competencies, management competencies, and methodological and theoretical competencies. Although time will not permit me to show you the detailed list of competencies for each domain, the list can admittedly be overwhelming for anyone aspiring to be an evaluator. However, there is no need to despair. Keep in mind that an evaluation team will have several members and that different members will have different strengths. Also keep in mind that there are several ways for any new evaluator to obtain the skills needed, such as formal education at the graduate level, work-related experience, self-directed learning, and mentorship. You will already have some of the skills from your undergraduate studies. Now let's look at the competencies in a little more detail. Ethics focus on the core values that guide the evaluation profession, regardless of geographical location. Their professional ethics and evaluators should strive to practice within the boundaries of what is right and good. Professional competencies focus on the critical attributes needed to function as an evaluator. These attributes should be based on universal best practice. Evaluators should comply with established standards, laws, regulations, execute their duties in a credible manner, and continuously undertake professional development activities. Interpersonal competencies focus on the people skills such as verbal communication, ability to engage stakeholders, negotiation and conflict resolution, and skills to successfully navigate organizational and other politics. Methodological competencies focus on the gamut of evaluation-specific, cost-analytical, and research methodologies that can be used to design an evaluation, and the technical competencies needed to collect and analyze data. Context-specific and situational competencies focus on understanding the unique circumstances of the evaluand. This involves sectorial and thematic knowledge to properly understand the evaluand, its stakeholders, and its environment. And finally, management competencies focus on the skills needed to successfully secure the evaluation job, design, execute, and complete the evaluation. It involves leadership, management, budgeting, scheduling, and communication skills. Now let's take a look at the courses and programs that the UWI Cave Hill campus offers. Since 1999, the Department of Management Studies has been offering the MSc Project Management and Evaluation degree. This program has trained hundreds of public and private sector individuals from across the region. You may, of course, be wondering, where are all these persons? Unfortunately, only a handful were interested in the evaluation component. The rest are all working in project management. We therefore have a lot of work to do to continue to promote M&E in the region, and I call upon all of my fellow regional evaluators to help with this effort. This is what the new program structure for the new academic year will look like. It is a project management degree with various specializations, and I've just included the M&E specialization on the slide. So it has a core of project management courses and then a core of M&E courses. The courses that are highlighted in blue, with the exception of research methods for business and social sciences, will be taught by me in the new academic year. So how can one acquire the skills needed to function as a competent evaluator? There are several ways to do this. One method is self-directed learning. There are many free electronic resources on the web to assist with learning the skills needed to function as an evaluator. In case you are not aware, membership in certain professional associations give members free access to various journals. For example, membership in the American Evaluation Association grants members free access to the American Journal of Evaluation and New Directions for Evaluation. You would have access to over 30 years of journals. The Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation, JMD, the brainchild of our panelist, Professor MIchael Scriven, is a free online journal. It was established in 2007, so you have access to about 15 years of free online resources there as well. There are also many other excellent books and journals available. So there's a lot of literature on M&E that can help with self-directed learning. Formal education is another means to obtain the skills needed. I think that self-directed learning by itself would be very difficult to obtain the methodological skills that are needed for this profession. Note, however, that many of these skills can actually be obtained from standard statistical research and cost analytical courses from disciplines and degrees outside of evaluation. Formal training is also needed to obtain the management competencies that are needed. However, most, if not all, aspiring evaluators would already possess many of these skills from their undergraduate studies. Formal training would also be valuable to understand the context-specific and situational competencies. Mentorship and self-directed learning can help here. And finally, we know, of course, that some of the most valuable learning comes from work experience and mentorship. This can help you to hone your interpersonal skills and to learn to navigate the politics of evaluation. I have also been actively trying to promote and build an evaluation culture by trying to populate the regional literature. I think this is really important if the region is to develop a tolerance and culture for M&E. I have lots of ideas for the types of scholarly writing that is needed. Unfortunately, there's never sufficient time in a day. My goals for all books produced is to make them user-friendly but comprehensive. So as Denise would have mentioned when she read my bio information, I have a co-authored book called Nuts and Bolts of Research Methodology. This will provide the very basic fundamentals in research methodology for any new aspiring evaluator. My newest book, The Role of Monitoring and Evaluation in the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, is co-authored with my colleague, Dr. Ruby Darga from Carleton University in Canada. It's going to be released later this month, I hope, or very early next month. I also have expressed Strengthening Evaluation Culture in the English-speaking Commonwealth Caribbean, a guide for evaluation practitioners and decision makers in the public, private, and NGO sectors. This book provides a very comprehensive overview of various evaluation-specific methodologies, ethical guidelines to guide the profession, etc. So it's really a comprehensive resource if you're new to evaluation and trying to ascertain what are many of the skills that you really need. And a detailed list of the competencies that you saw on the earliest slide, I think it was slide 3, would be explained in that book. And I also have a work in progress with my colleague Brian Yates from the US called Cost Inclusive Evaluation, Planning It, Doing It, Using It. This book is something that we are very concerned about, and it is a long work in progress. It started all the way back in 2012, and it's only now picking up some momentum. We hope to have it published early next year. Most of the chapters have already been written, but this book really looks at the neglected component of professional evaluations that is still not really widely used. That is looking at what programs cost, and was there better programs that could have been done for the same cost and provide better outcomes, etc. So that book is an important work that we hope to have published by early next year. In conclusion, I will provide some thoughts on the adequacy of the academic education and training resources in the Caribbean for preparing the next cadre of evaluation professionals to meet the development needs of the region. I would say that the education and training in the region is adequate if supplemented with self-directed learning and mentoring. There is definitely need for more specialized courses that focus on evaluation-specific methodologies and data collection. There is urgent need for better real-time and evidence-based data to help inform policy making. There is going to be much more demand for monitors and evaluators as the world works towards the UN 2030 SDGs agenda. The regional educational institutions therefore need to do more to help with the building of an evaluation culture through promotion as well as development of courses that will help evaluators to acquire the skills needed to function as competent evaluators. There's also urgent need to cultivate a more vibrant evaluation culture, and all of us today have an important role to play in this initiative. Finally, regardless of your current training, evaluators must annually undertake professional development activities to keep abreast of what is happening in the profession. In other words, this is a mandatory requirement to maintain one license to practice in most other professions. However, although certification is not currently a requirement for the evaluation profession, I still think that it is critically important that evaluators do engage in professional development each year to keep abreast of what is happening in the profession. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Persaud. Big takeaway again, ethics should be at the core of all of the competencies, and we must have professional competencies, interpersonal competencies, context-specific situational competencies, management competencies as evaluators. We should engage in self-directed learning. We can join professional organizations. I want to say like the CEI, for those persons who have not yet joined us. And of course, if possible, get involved in a mentorship program. And the big thing, of course, is that we must keep abreast. It's not about learning and stopping, but the evaluators have to be kept to help other disciplines respond to what is going on in the society, in the world. And so we must engage in professional development. Thank you, Dr. Persaud. Right. Our Our third presenter, sorry about that. Just share my screen. Our third presenter, Dr. Gomes, has not come on as yet, but she did alert me that she may be having a challenge this afternoon. So I will just briefly share. I'm not going to share what she's going to share, but just talk briefly to the course being offered at UWI in her department. So Dr. Gomes teaches, she co-lectures in a course called Social Policy and Evaluation. And she lectures with another person, Miss Belinda Isaac Batiste. I did a guest lecture in this course last year, and I was alluding to what the course was intended to produce. And so I'll talk briefly about what I know, but she did send me a few slides to talk about it. So students learn how to evaluate social programs, policies, and services. Students appreciate everything they do related to the Caribbean social policy context. They get examples to look at. It's a compulsory course for people who are doing their masters in sociology or masters in social work. And it builds on content they would have done before in a course called Social Development Policy and Research Methods. And the emphasis is always on critical analysis and evaluation of existing public policies and programs in the Caribbean. So everything they try to make persons ready for the context in which they will be going in. Topics addressed in that course: social policies in the Caribbean, different types of evaluation, evaluation design, program theory and logic models, reliability, validity and measurement, sampling, data, ethics, data analysis, those kinds of things that come across. And of course, building capacity of the evaluator, but also of the persons, empowering the persons who are evaluated by the learning that is shared, teaching them what is valued, and about how to deliver quality services. Then the assessment is an evaluation project in an interest area for the specific student, and the students do all, they do a full evaluation, and they are supervised to finish their project. And here are some of the readings, in addition to readings from outside the region, by Hudson, Introduction to Social Policy, and by Rossi, an American author. the Vision 2030 National Development Strategy of Trinidad and Tobago. They look at national development plans. So they look at regional strategic documents as they go through their course. And so here were the points that she wanted to make. In teaching this course, the successes, the student interest was high because lots of questions are asked and solutions are proposed as students go through the course material. Students come from a variety of contexts. People are working in schools, people are working in the health sector, people are doing and working at the social service delivery organizations or departments of the government. There's some challenges. Sometimes students may not be as reading as widely as expected, and so sometimes the assessment, sometimes of the needs may not be as comprehensive as you want it to be, but that is something that comes with practice, that she says. So then the length of the course, she says the course is just too packed. What they expected to do in one semester should really be broken down into 2 semesters. There's a challenge as well of having trained professionals, M&E professionals to supervise. So having now understood this link and having made this link with the CEI, she will be asking us then to help her to identify persons who can supervise students or mentor students, or with whom students can have a conversation. The curriculum linked to the SDGs is not as strong as she thinks it should be. Thinking about the future, there were 3 things that she wanted to say. One, in student preparation for the future, that the whole issue of valuing data and having evidence informed decision making really has to be strengthened. So that ties into what Nadini talked about in terms of having that evaluation culture and just how data is used to make decisions. The other thing is about, so she gave an example of social workers working in schools now, and in this time of this COVID crisis, they're not interacting with students to address and to respond to students' problems, the problems they're having or the challenges they're having. And so the data capture may not be as accurate as the ministries would like it to be, because they're just not be able to interact. A common thread, of course, through students who have challenges would be poverty. So the access to even the same devices to be in contact with them is just not as it should be. So that really capturing the data and presenting information about the quality of their work is not optimal. The second point that she wanted to talk about is that in this new way of working, in preparing her students to go out and work, and as this COVID has just exposed that we can't do things in one way, we have to find different ways of working. So as she spoke to some students about their thoughts about their whole the whole new way of working since COVID began, their performance appraisal came up as a point of concern, because one student actually admitted she may have to lie about everything that's on her performance appraisal because nobody's looking at her. So therefore, in terms of that whole data and collecting sound data for decision making, it means that supervision, there has to be a different kind of supervision of social workers as they work. And so she has to prepare her students for that kind of supervision. And then, of course, there's a need then for more coordination and harmonization within and across ministries and departments that utilize social workers. So there's a common understanding of how social workers are contributing to the success of the organizations and the programs that they're trying to implement. And then finally, she says that the social workers themselves are now seeing the need to work across disciplines to solve problems at community level and the school level. Of course, not just with community social workers and school social workers, but involving the fire officers, the police, the health officials, the member of parliament, NGOs in the area. There has to be a multidisciplinary approach, and we have to find ways of working together to solve these problems, because when it manifests individually with one student in the school, it really is an indication of what may be happening in that student's home, and then of course in that student's community, and then of course community to community, maybe that student's, the country in which the student lives. So these were just the thoughts that Dr. Gomes wanted to share this afternoon. She's sorry she couldn't come, but certainly she knows that she is now in relationship with the community, with the Caribbean Evaluators International, and so she will be in contact with us. We now have the fourth presenter, and this is Professor Jerome Delisle. Very sorry. Sorry, please submit this. Are you hearing me? Yes. Professor Delisle is a professor of educational leadership and the current director of the School of Education at UWI St. Augustine campus in Trinidad and Tobago. He is also the current chair and director. Sorry. He's also the current chair of the St. Augustine Campus Ethics Committee. Professor Delisle earned a PhD in education from UWI in 1994. His training includes multiple specializations: educational administration, psychology, sociology, curriculum and research. His thesis on the work environment of secondary school teachers is mixed methods using an organizational psychology frame to apply multivariate statistical analyses and multi-site case studies to the issue of better understanding teacher responses to work cultures in Caribbean schools. Professor Delisle often works at the intersection of measurement, evaluation, and educational administration, and has contributed to the development of national monitoring, assessments, and school performance metrics used by the Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Education. He has worked widely in education policy issues in the Caribbean, including gender achievement and the retention of the 11+ examinations, common entrance, SCA in some countries. He has worked with the IDB and the Commonwealth Education Ministers Conference. Professor Delisle has published in top journals in the field, including the Journal of Educational Administration, School Effectiveness and School Improvement, Studies in Educational Evaluation and Educational Management and Leadership. His work ranges from studying principal leadership in high poverty schools to evaluating system reform pathways in the Global South. He is a member of several learned societies in evaluation and educational administration. Dr. Delisle, I invite you to make your contribution.
Thank you, Dr. Batiste. I'm delighted to be given this opportunity to chat a little bit about monitoring and evaluation training at the SOE, going back to 1994 when I was there as a student. I got my PhD then to last year currently. Okay, so let's move forward. Next slide. Thank you. So I'm on my phone, so I don't have access to slides. All right. So when we look at the issue at this point in time in terms of where evaluation is, and I'm focusing upon the Ministry of Education, which is a very large client, we do find that expertise is quite limited. Positions are also limited. I think positions are more evident in some of the other ministries. There have been some evaluations, but they are what we call it scavenging. It's not meant to be nasty, but I remember when I did the SEMP evaluation closeout, when the secondary education modernization program was coming to an end, and I was working for the then PS there. They themselves were looking at what was done. They did not hire a monitoring and evaluation person They had a consultant, but they were looking at what was done, and you realize that what was done didn't fully collect the data that should have been collected on SEMP. And as a result, I think that project didn't have the impact it should. I think one of the best ways to understand what is happening is that there are long periods of stability and then a sudden jump in attention. Now we're in a period of stability now where nobody cares. But for a short time, during the minor administration, there was a sudden explosion in attention centered around the 2020 plan, but there was also a clear plan to have evaluation across the ministries. That has not continued in other administrations, and we are still waiting for it to survive. So if we go forward in terms of the slides, you'll see, that punctuated equilibrium theory by Bamberg and others, which explains the selective attention of policymakers. So this gives you the context. Thanks so much. Let's move over to the next slide. This gives you the context of what we're dealing with in terms of our own program development. And what we try to do is to build capacity in terms of evaluation, but also we want to be doers. Not just teachers, but also doers. So we do our own internal evaluations. We do plan, and we do have we do take in some consultancies. We do realize that currently in the Ministry of Education that you don't necessarily have to have evaluation to become a monitoring and evaluation officer. Again, going back to the SEMP, I was thrilled to have learned. I'm asking them, why didn't you fill the position? And they said, well, they need somebody who was up and running. They were paying low salary, 7.5, and there were 112 applications, but they were all people doing their postgraduate certifications. So they weren't up and running, they were students. I said, wow, that's, in my mind, of course, because I was being pretty nice. That's very crooked thinking. Okay, so let's move on. Telling you about what we're doing. Next slide, please. Thank you. Right, so we have been reaching out. We have always targeted both social and educational evaluation. And we in the last 3 years, we've linked it to measurement. And the question is why? Well, we would like evaluators to use a range of evaluation models and designs. A very strong qualitative school, and as a result, we don't people just to run. We want them to use a range, quantitative, mixed methods, and multiple qualitative methods. And we think that by linking it to the measurement field, they will be able to develop useful, valid instruments. Okay, new slide. So I think the evaluation course was developed. There was actual specific training in assessment and evaluation. I think Lenny says that group. And the course, they brought in a number of lecturers from elsewhere. The course was developed. And then we wrote the course for the MEd in SEMP educational leadership. We added some components like curriculum evaluation. We didn't do system evaluation as yet, which is the actual term that we use in the education community. Next slide. Of course, we're very thankful to the late Mr. Keller. So we've added that system evaluation, which is a strong practice in some of the Latin American countries like Brazil and Chile and Uruguay, where you use national data, very linked to the monitoring systems, and we still have that component. We've kind of expanded it with international assessments now. We do have a PhD in evaluation, but it's through the apprentice system. We even have graduates. Alicia is our first graduate, and she graduated about 3 or 4 years ago. And of course, she did a mixed methods evaluation of early childhood in a disadvantaged district. I'm not going to call the district. And of course, she got mentioned in the an award in the mixed methods conference. It was quite a good piece of work. Next slide, please. We've really enjoyed our apprenticeship system. We know when we, well, it's both measurement / evaluation. And we know that when when Cito was here from the Netherlands, they were telling us, well, we need to produce much more than 1 or 2 every 5 years or 20, but we can't do that. So we use the apprentice system. They get to go to conferences and they get to engage, and we think that's a useful way to build competencies and passion for the profession. Doesn't always work, but we try. Next slide, please. Going back to our history, and this is probably the future now. We've developed a small suite of courses since 2013. And we now have separate courses. It's on the books, it's approved. We haven't run it as yet. So courses on evaluation history. We are developing a course. It's not developed, we see a version of it on data visualization. Our mixed methods course is very strong and centered on evaluation, because we do have the material and the books from Donald Martins to be able to run it as mixed methods from a mixed methods evaluation. So that's a pretty strong course. Next slide, please. So the future, we're working on that right now in my next 5 years. So if we move forward with the slide, under preparation now, we have a degree called Educational Measurement, Research, Evaluation, and Assessment. And in red, you'll see that, and yellow, evaluation is scattered through the 18 or so courses. It's patterned after EDD, but it's not the EDD. It is a PhD because there's a 50,000 word thesis as well. But it's a taught course, so you get to do all these research courses. And we're thinking about technocrats being able to really carry the system forward in the measure of education, especially for the agencies. This was developed, and this seems to be where we're going. Next slide, please. The ministry gave us an initial design, and we renamed it Equity-Centered Leadership. Clearly, it includes technology since COVID, because that's the time that they gave us this. And of course, we also included evaluation fully there. So it's about leadership, but it includes a full complement of approved evaluation courses, written already and approved. In the meantime, of course, we have 6121 as the well, this is my like 6121 as the course that we can offer even to people who are not doing any of our master's program. But when we offer the full suite of courses, it will be within the EDD or the MEA setting. We have a master's called, we haven't run it yet. It's still, we've been meeting a long time for that, and now we have no gate. But it's called the MIA, Measurement, Evaluation, and Assessment. And it's a double specialization. So you could specialize in assessment, or you could specialize in evaluation. So that should be the end. Next slide. I should have pictures now only. So again, interest has waned, strengthened and waned. Evaluation was, we had sometimes up to 25, 30 members in the class, but the ministry has not responded by encouraging evaluation. So what has resulted is somewhat declining interest. Next slide. All right, but we are intent on creating evaluators in education, and clearly our strategy is a full suite of courses, as well as being offering services as well. So we have done some pretty important evaluations. We worked for a private company this year, and in 2016 we evaluated the new curriculum for the Ministry of Education. So that keeps our students hopefully active, as well as our trained persons. Thank you so much. I hope this was of interest to you.
Thank you, Dr. Delisle. So again, some takeaways, a governance issue, and this is in terms of the Ministry of Education and the focus that has impacted use of evaluation. But what is good is that you still have the School of Education in UWI still has a link to the Ministry of Education around developing evaluation courses. But of course, maybe the importance of the building that evaluation culture is not a priority as yet, okay? However, you did say things like there's a lack of qualified personnel, and that will always impact the quality of whatever evaluation work is undertaken. That evaluators should use a range of tools linked to the measurement field. At least that's what you encourage in School of Education. But you do have an apprenticeship program to build some competencies for evaluation, and in what you showed about the courses, the school does plan to offer more evaluation specific courses. Thank you, Dr. Delisle. And so we go on to Dr. Arlene Bailey, who is coming from St. Elise's in Jamaica. Let me just go ahead. Dr. Arlene Bailey, University of West Indies, Mona, Jamaica, is a senior research fellow at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute, St. Elise's. She teaches research methods and has been involved in teaching M&E. Her research focus includes information and communication technologies and sustainable development. She was a member of the CEI team, which collaborated with a team from the Pacific for the article in the 2019 publication of the International Development Evaluation Association called Evaluation for Transformational Change. The name of that chapter was the Transformative Agenda for Evaluation in the Small Island Developing States, the Caribbean and the Pacific. She has the Caribbean at heart. We welcome Dr. Bailey to give her contribution.
Very much, Dr. Latif, and thanks very much to CEI and the organizers and fellow presenters for the insight shared. And it is a pleasure to be presenting in this panel and also to have collaborated on the book chapter. So happy and look forward to further collaborations as well. So in an overview of UWI Mona's M&E courses, as Prof. Delisle mentioned, School of Education has been very involved in evaluation and monitoring courses, and these are two that the School of Education at Mona has offered as well. At the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, the LISET, we have the course Monitoring and Evaluation at the graduate level, and it's also offered as a standalone course. The Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work has two courses, one at the undergraduate level and one at the graduate level related to monitoring and evaluation of social programs. So this slide provides an example of some of the learning objectives for the courses. At the undergraduate level, students would be involved in defining, discussing, and developing aspects of evaluation components. And at all levels, The principles of research ethics are very important. Any research projects are submitted to the campus ethics committees for review. Also included are areas such as types of evaluations, the definition of M&E indicators, how to develop protocols and evaluation questions to support RBM, and of course, impact evaluations and areas such as return on investments. So SOLISIS's involvement with M&E goes across a range of areas, including research, teaching and research, students' experience and internships, commission studies, and underpinning all of this, collaboration and partnerships through multidisciplinary teams. So, and we're happy as well to collaborate on these in the area of M&E. The SOLISIS MSc Development Studies program is now online. The director had embarked on the process of converting to the online mode before the pandemic, so plans were underway and assisted in the transition. Capacity building for the transition to online was supported by the Commonwealth of Learning, presented in gLOCAL earlier this week as well. And the online offering widened the potential audience for the courses, including the M&E course, which you see a flyer for on the right, which is taught by Dr. Dacia Leslie. So it's the online modality has allowed, as we know, prior to and now, especially with the pandemic, the wider participation of persons. The cohorts reflect the diversity in professional experience, academic background, and demographic characteristics. So for example, we'll have students from different professional sectors or types of institutions, public, private, NGO, who are playing different roles in monitoring and evaluation. We heard about many of these roles during the presentations this week, and they have various experience in the sector, either as evaluators or who commission evaluations or who are program implementers, and the different areas of focus, and then the demographic characteristics as well of the students. So this helps in the discussion of ideas and supports further knowledge and capacity building, networking, and then the resulting advocacy and based on their respective roles. Some of the graduates also apply to join SOLISIS's MPhil PhD programs going forward after completing the MSc Development Studies. The progression to the research paper in the MSc is grounded. There are a number of core courses in the program, and research methods, as we heard throughout this session today as well, is very important and provides a critical platform for the development of systematic research and the development of the research proposal. So they start with research methods and then go on to monitoring and evaluation, and also courses in quantitative methods and qualitative methods are covered in these courses as well. And the research proposal is refined throughout these courses, taking them into the course where they work on the research paper, depending if they're full or part-time in year 1 or year 2. These are some of the field research activities that students have been involved in. Of course, due to the pandemic, data collection activities are now primarily online or via remote means. So these are some of the ways in which we've had to adapt, or with the utilization of secondary qualitative or quantitative data and various approaches. The students' involvement in research activities is a developmental aspect of SALISES programs. And also very important, as we mentioned, SALISES's partnerships on M&E seminars. So the flyers on the right show some of the CEI and VOPE members who have participated in the monitoring and evaluation seminars. And as Valerie mentioned yesterday, we partnered with CEI on the first gLOCAL Visa Forum, and a number of CEI VOPE members and friends participated. And Sean Gray was also presenting, who's launched the scholarship as well earlier this week. So we thank everyone for their collaboration on these. The SDGs have been a key part of the discussion this week and in this session as well. SALISES with the government of Jamaica and the UNDP in the preparation of Jamaica's VNR. And we're currently working on other activities related to socioeconomic assessments. As mentioned as well, data availability continues to be a key challenge, and options continue to be explored to address the data requirements for monitoring the SDGs. So this provides an example at the time of some of the indicators, and as was being discussed yesterday, it's CDB and PIOJ and so on, mentioning the need for further ability to collect data and disaggregated data as well to monitor some of these indicators. SALISES has been partnering on data sharing. There is a data bank, and for this particular case, we are working with IISD on a portal to highlight some of the SDG indicators, information that's available, and to see whether at the local and community level, additional data can be added as well. Another aspect in which we can contribute to evaluation education is through the research and publications. And this is an example as well of the sharing of research findings, a special issue of one of the SALISES journals, Social and Economic Studies, and a special issue on the SDGs. So going forward, to support the continued development of M&E professionals, we would look at continuing to enhance the tools, the teaching and learning tools, and so on, to support the areas of focus that have been highlighted throughout these sessions. So it's important to provide support for the young and emerging evaluators, capacity building, mentorship, and collaboration. And soft skills have been mentioned as well, and facilitating local knowledge and knowledge of the context. And then to find a balance and to find what works best in the new context of primarily remote and online collection of data, especially in cases where persons may not have access to the ICTs to facilitate that. It's important as well in terms of continued advocacy and greater inclusion of M&E plans in initiatives, and to recognize as persons were saying, to use if budget has been allocated for this, to have our students and M&E professionals advocate for the implementation of the M&E plans. Sharing of findings, very important, and platforms for data sharing coordination. There have been calls for that as well during these sessions, and the utilization of the results to facilitate evidence-based policies and priorities. And overall, for the aims for our students and participants in workshops and our evaluation community to continue with further collaboration and partnerships to support the innovation and transformation through evaluation education. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. So again, some takeaways. So the School of Education, we have courses offered through the School of Education, through Salisis and I think the Sociology Department. I think I missed that when I was writing. And there's a diversity in the professional experience of persons who are seeking evaluation education. That is something that is key. Ties into what Dr. Scriven said at the beginning in terms of just evaluation, just helping other disciplines to do their work, the transdisciplinary part of aspect of the evaluation. The curriculum is linked to the SDGs, the one offered by Salisis. Students' involvement in research is part of the developmental approach taken by Salisis, which is good. There are partnerships, the Salisis engages in partnerships to provide professional development opportunities to support young and emerging evaluators, to help students build soft skills and contextual awareness, and to utilize a range of modalities for data collection. And because, of course, the crisis is this COVID crisis has now taught us to use online and remote data collection processes more efficiently, hopefully. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. And now we have a video because Dr. Morkel, it could be midnight for her, and she does have young children, and so I met with her on Saturday, and so I just want to play a little bit of the video for us right now, so we'll have to stimulate our discussion later. Share screen. Oh dear.
Are you able to share?
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, but are you hearing the video?
No, you have to share the screen.
The video is not even on, Lenise.
You have to
It's
share
not on.
it.
Okay, let me,
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it here when I come on.
Ah, yes, it's coming.
It's coming up now?
Yes,
Great, okay, here we go. Sorry about that.
no problem.
Okay.
I'm incredibly humbled to have been invited to share my thoughts, my opinions. I do apologize that I'm not physically there with you. And I'm sure you might have heard that the time zone difference is quite extreme. And so we've decided to have this recording. So I appreciate you giving me the space to do the recording as well. My name is Candice Morkel. I'm currently the director of a center called the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results, Anglophone Africa. We are an implementing partner also of the Global Evaluation Initiative, and I'll share with you just a little bit about who we are and what we do, so that you have a bit of a background in terms of what our role is in the evaluation education space. So the CLEAR initiative is, as I said, the Center for Learning on Evaluation and Results. It's a global multilateral partnership, which is basically aimed at strengthening developing countries' evaluation capacities, and it focuses on results and evidence-based decision-making. We were established in 2010 as a global initiative. The Anglophone Africa Center was established in 2011. A large part of our work initially was around training, progressed and worked more closely with governments in the main it was clear that there were other kind of capacities that were needed to be strengthened in the enabling environment. So, for example, strengthening national evaluation systems from a more systems perspective, thinking about things in the enabling environment, such as the policy environment and the culture for performance and learning. So a lot of our work has now expanded to include those kinds of technical and advisory services. As I said, we are one of 6 regional centers. We are based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and situated in a particular faculty, so the Faculty of Commerce, Law and Management. And a lot of our centers are actually situated in the university environment. And that gives you also a little bit of a clue about our connection with evaluation education, because in our host institutions as well, there's a symbiotic relationship with our centers in terms of what we do to strengthen evaluation education in the university or academic environment, in addition to the other kinds of evaluation capacity development work that we do in our regions. We are also an implementing partner to the GEI, the Global Evaluation Initiative. Some of you might be familiar with the GEI, which is a new initiative that has brought together government, citizens, multilateral agencies, donors, experts, VOPs as well, and all partners really to support this notion of strengthening national evaluation capacities and evaluation systems. So just very briefly what we do, like I said, our work has expanded to including, technical and advisory services, but you'll see in this diagram that's in front of you, we have structured ourselves according to what we call business lines. And so we have on the left of your screen, evaluation systems, where we work mainly with governments, including legislatures. And so we have a program that deals with strengthening legislative oversight as well. And then a business line that really focuses on the evaluation capacity strengthening in terms of individual technical capacities and capabilities for evaluation, both on producing evidence, but also the use of evidence. And so that's the curriculum development, the training, and so forth. And then we have a research and learning business line that makes sure that what we're learning from our practice, that we actually make sure that there's a golden thread running between what we learn and strengthening then our own interventions and services. And in the middle diagram, where you see the circles are basically the areas of work or the kinds of functions that we operate in. So we do diagnostics, although diagnostics, I think, is not the kind of word we use anymore. We call them situation analyses to get a good idea of what the demand is in the environment that we're working. And then we intervene wherever that demand is, whether it is in capacity building or the policy environment and so forth. So that's just a little bit of an example of the kind of work that we do. And I will leave these slides, I'll circulate it amongst the colleagues, Lenice and Valerie, and you can spend a bit more time reading through what it is that we do if you are interested in learning more about our actual work program. So what I really want to talk to you about today is what we had called a collaborative curriculum development project. And 2015-16, we did a scoping exercise towards collaboratively looking at evaluation, education, and training across higher education institutions and public sector training institutions in Anglophone Africa. And Nadini Bailey, that you see in brackets over there, basically funded this first scoping exercise because the problem statement that was arising at the time, that there was a lack of cohesion and coherence in evaluation education, particularly amongst higher education institutions. And so some of the reflections that came out of the consultation processes was that there's a short supply of highly knowledgeable, skilled, experienced, thoughtful, indigenous professional evaluators across Africa. Now, some of that is also contentious because there's also the issue around whether people are given the opportunity to actually operate in the evaluation space and whether it's a problem that it's the same individuals or the same companies or institutions who are involved in the evaluation space, and whether it is a problem of supply or whether it is the absorptive capacity, so to speak, of the market to actually, where there are many people available to do evaluations, but the capacity of the market to absorb them is actually not there. In any event, Also, a key reflection was that there's a lack of harmony in the evaluation education space. Mostly short-term courses at the time were dominating the space. And I think it might still be the case, although many more universities have actually established programs in monitoring and evaluation. And also that it is seen as somewhat of a homeless discipline, that it doesn't have its own disciplinary anchor, and that it is, attached to many other kinds of disciplines, whether it's education, psychology, management, and so forth. The bulk of the training was thought to be mainly donor-driven, and also there's a question around who should be in the driving seat to drive the cohesion. Should it be VOPs, voluntary organizations for professional evaluation? Should it be higher education institutions? For the African continent, of course, the big question is, should it be AFRIA, the African Evaluation Association? So that was a big question that came out of those consultation processes. There was a bit of an abeyance between 2015, 2016, but then we got further funding in 2017-18 to take the project further. So there was a bit of a hiatus between, as we received the findings from the 2015-2016 consultation process. But then we were able to say, okay, let's take the consultation process further based on the problem statement that arose from the initial consultations. We then consulted with roughly 18 higher education institutions from across 11 countries in the region, but we also included VOPs and AFRIA. And the purpose was really to look at the problem statement that arose from that first consultation and to start to strategize and not, belabor the conversation about what the problem is, but strategize around how do we then harmonize evaluation education in the region in order to strengthen the role of academic institutions in professionalizing evaluation. We had an approach where we actually had working groups because we wanted this to be participant-led. We didn't want as CLEAR-AA to be the thought leaders in this space. We actually wanted the academic institutions to lead the thinking around these questions. And so we had 3 working groups, one group around competencies, a group around curriculum, and a group around institutional arrangements. And each of these working groups produced a framework, and it was a blended consultation process way before COVID obviously came and now has forced us to do online consultations. But we had a blend of face-to-face and online because for resource reasons, we couldn't convene people physically in the same space too often. And so we had 2 face-to-face consultation sessions, and the rest of the time the working groups were working online. Some of the key learnings that emerged from these working groups was that understanding the academic sector is actually critically important. And so there was this consensus, and there was even this comment that was made that Senate is king. There was the consensus that it's actually when one wants to establish any kind of curriculum in the academic space, the institutional processes and the regulatory environment for the academic sector has been set in stone, so to speak, and one has to follow those processes. So even though we have a strong desire to see evaluation professionalizing and having, more postgraduate qualifications in M&E, one has to understand how the academic sector operates and understand that, getting the legitimacy from the academic community is very important before one can kind of set in place any kind of curriculum for evaluation. And that is usually at an individual institutional level, which brought about other questions around, how do we get this cohesion and this harmonization in this space? Because there isn't a single continental body or international body, for example, that puts standards in place for academic qualifications. It really is an individual academic institution that does this. Another finding was that greater cohesion is needed. And the question is, what holds the evaluation education community together, particularly in the academic environment? And because it's so split across various disciplines and various faculties and departments, there isn't really this, kind of central place that holds the academic evaluation community together. I've just run out of time, so I'm going to try to quickly wrap up. A key feature of the field is its transdisciplinarity, and this is coming through very strongly even in the International Evaluation Academy and the working group of the council. And Denise and I sit on a particular working group called the Evaluation Education Working Group. And this is coming forward as a key feature even in the working group. But it is something which has been identified amongst the people that we are communicating with and consulting with as well, that it's a transdiscipline and it's actually a strength rather than a weakness. Although it also, on the other side of the coin, it can be said to be homeless as a discipline. We've also found that there's very little empirical work on competencies and learning in the Global South. And we need to collaborate more strongly with education specialists to look at what actually is going to lead to the transfer of learning, the transfer of competencies, knowledge and skills, and how that is linked to evaluation education curriculum. And then one of the most challenging areas is actually the institutional arrangements. Who should lead in this space? Who should define what the standard curriculum should be? Who regulates in this space? Who signs off and determines that a particular institution's curriculum is a high quality curriculum? So that was actually one of the most challenging conversations we had. Now, just to wrap up, where to from here? Because the work is not done, certainly. And this is one of these spaces where constant consultation is needed. And what we often say is we build the boat while sailing. So even though there's a need really to start to put some of this curriculum and some of these competencies in place, because there isn't this institutional body that guides or regulates, this has remained an agreement amongst 18 institutions from across 11 countries about what constitutes a harmonized set of competencies or a harmonized curriculum for the African continent. But it still remains that any institution doesn't have to comply with that. It's just, in terms of what is our legitimacy to make these pronouncements in this evaluation education space to say that the frameworks that we came up with should be used as a lodestar or a guiding document to benchmark any kind of curriculum or competency frameworks. So what we really need to start looking at is quality assurance and validation. And maybe we should be looking at the existing regulatory bodies or communities of practice, so to speak, on the continent to look at this quality assurance and validation process. So there is, for example, the African Association or the Association of African Universities could be perhaps, collaborate with them to start to make these frameworks, quality assure them and make them, a bit more of a valid framework that can be used by institutions. We also need to do a bit more piloting. So what we've done so far as Clear AA is that we've done a landscape analysis of the existing qualifications in Uganda, but based at Makerere University. We kind of collaborated with that university to look at a landscape analysis as a way of looking at where the gaps are and could this make a case for curriculum building in Makerere University. We've also done some benchmarking using these frameworks at the University of Zambia, but we need more examples to test these frameworks out and to see if they are actually meaningful at an institutional level. Of course, we need further research and consultation. One of the big gaps, of course, is that there isn't a lot of empirical research around competencies in the Global South, as I've mentioned, and we really could do with some research on how do we transfer skills and learning, and how do we harmonize this across institutions? And I think my last point is that we could, one of the great opportunities, and as I mentioned, both Lanice and I sit on the working group evaluation education on the International Evaluation Academy Council. What we could do is to leverage on the work of this particular academy and the council to see whether we can get more support for some of this work that we're wanting to do. The quality assurance, the validation, the research. So let me pause there. I think that is a
So that was Dr. Morkel sharing some results from the work done by Claire looking at evaluation programs, across English-speaking universities in Africa. And so things like they found that there was a lack of cohesion and coherence among the programs. There was a short supply of highly knowledgeable and skilled indigenous professionals And evaluation seems to be a homeless discipline. The bulk of training done around evaluation is driven by donors. And of course, then who should really be saying what should be involved in evaluation education courses? So I have a question. I haven't seen questions in the chat, but my question now as we approach the end, because I know we only have about 10 minutes left. As we move past this crisis that we're in here, what is needed for evaluation education? And I know what each of the institutions offer, but I would like to hear the panelists' view of what are the skills needed for persons with evaluation education coming out of your programs to face what the conditions that they have to face now in the work context. Anyone can start.
Are you muted, Arlene? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yes. Hi, Denise, and thanks again. I think one of the key areas will need to be adapting to the online, as you mentioned, coming out of the crisis. There still might be some persons might still prefer for an extended period, for example, online programs, online and remote interactions. There might be a greater reach in some cases, but in other cases, it's not possible to reach persons in that manner. I think we will still need the skills related to collecting data. I think community-based approaches will still be very key in terms of facilitating interactions, and persons coming out of the programs will need to look at the areas such as data visualization and how to influence evidence-based policies, presenting the information and the findings in such a way that they are utilized in the best ways possible, given the limited funding that might be available coming out of the crisis.
Lenise, I just wanted to add that in terms of data collection in particular, we will definitely need to get new ethical guidelines that deal with remote data collection, because most of the ethical guidelines at present never really dealt with ethical data collection. And now there are new issues like data security, confidentiality, if you're working from your home and your other persons in the home at the same time for both the interviewer and interviewee. The issue with the privacy, if you're asking interviewees to put on their cameras, etc., and their backgrounds, etc., you can see straight into their homes and so forth. So those issues really need to get, gather some new attention, because it's not something we've focused on in the past.
Dr. Delisle?
Okay, well, I was hoping there were other comments for me. I think that post-pandemic, we have to continue the job of trying to theorize on evaluation and evaluation use within our specific context of small island post-colonial nation states. I think the context is unique, and if you go back to some of the earlier articles, there's an article in Belize about evaluation use in Belize, for example. You'll find that there are commonalities in the way people understand evaluation and evidence, and there is a need as we build courses to understand what that means for our unique context. So it's good that we share and we have frameworks, but these frameworks must be context specific and must recognize the cultures that exist in these small islands, especially in terms of so everybody talk about evidence-based policy making, evidence-informed or evidence-influenced policy making. What has been the context in the Caribbean? What does history tell us? How do we get policymakers out of that so that they begin to value evaluations?
Okay, thank you. I am not, can anyone tell me if Dr. Scriven is still on? I'm not seeing him. Nadini, can you tell me?
He is, Lenise.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
seeing him.
Would you like to speak?
Dr. Scriven, yes, go ahead.
Yes. Say yes for me.
Yes, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Dr. Scriven, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on skills needed by evaluators, you know, past pandemic, in terms of what the evaluation education could, how the evaluation education could add to the skills of evaluators to address the post-pandemic context?
General skills or particular ones?
Your choice.
Well, I think that the way I like to begin is with consumer reports, because everybody understands that product evaluation is a sort of standard procedure. And they use the listing of criteria, scoring on each criterion, and then adding it all up. And that's a good beginning. If they can learn how to do that, then we can go on to the more serious question, which is how do you weight the different criteria for importance, which turns out to be where you can't use mathematics. So starting with product evaluate, move on to program evaluation, and then to ethical evaluation. That makes sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
You're muted, Lenise.
Yes, it is going on and off. Yes, yes, Dr. Scriven made a lot of sense. And so it just goes back to the models. We have to really train our students in those models, the different models of evaluation, right? But your suggestion would be get the product evaluation model first. We want to get to the program evaluation skills that you need. So there's a comment. It would be interesting to hear the thoughts on the needs for evaluator competencies related to being methodologically agile. In essence, what is the best approach to use which particular evaluator situation? Being a quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method expert is not enough. Anyone, go ahead. A few minutes again. Anyone could take that.
Okay, well, let me have a shot at that.
Yes, okay, have a shot.
Okay, so many of us in the Caribbean, we are attuned to specific approaches. So we are quantitative or we're qualitative, or we adopt mixed methods blindly, and we say, okay, fine, this is mixed methods, and we try to get the most complex design. I'm saying that because yes, I've always been in the mixed methods community, and I've published on mixed methods. I think there are a number of factors that are involved, and that you can get a level of ecological validity and trustworthiness with many designs. So rather than look at a specific design, I try to ensure that I increase the trustworthiness of the study. For example, if I'm using qualitative methods, I try to make sure, mixed methods, I try to make sure I have integration. I have triangulation. So that kind of approach, I think, is very useful. It's not the only approach. We really have to be strong in the quantitative as well, especially in the Caribbean, where we're making high-stakes decisions.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Delisle. Will any other panelists like to just offer? Anything else? Arlene, yes.
Yes, thanks, Elise. Lenise, I think the approach, trying to find the best approach to address the question or what is being explored will still have to be carefully assessed in terms of the context, the availability of information. And so, for example, if there's no baseline data, how will persons go about it? And then there is a question just above that in the chat about how we're incorporating it in courses, remote data collection. And a lot of that to be considered as well is the availability of sample frames. So for example, if you are working with a community on a particular evaluation, do they have contact information, either phone or email addresses for the persons, or is there someone who would do some of the face-to-face components in relation to facilitating the remote data collection? If a focus group is going to be online, for example, is it that persons will have to be facilitated with access to data plans, the device, or is it that persons would be brought together in a specific location with all of the health and safety protocols observed, and then a remote link included? So those are some of the considerations that have to be, that might be part of going forward, especially for vulnerable groups, and the ethical principles, as Nadini had mentioned as well.
Denise, I just wanted to add to what Arlene was saying, because Luis is asking about how remote data collection and conducting evaluations remotely might be addressed in course forward. Now, the UWI have a very long-winded and rigorous process. So it's not as straightforward as, yes, we see it, and it can just be done overnight. It has to go through many layers before it can get up to the top where it is reapproved. So this process can usually take between 6 to 8 months, depending on the volume of new course revisions that are taking place. So it can be done, and we are continuously revising our course content to make them more relevant to the changing market demands and needs. But it is not something that can be done overnight. So as I said, our program is already approved for new academic year. We cannot at this point send something forward to change the course content overnight. After I finish, because most of those courses are new, so it's going to be as I prepare, and I'm the lecturer now assigned to the course, even though I did not necessarily develop the course, that I'm seeing that these are weaknesses in the current course structure because of the changing environment, and therefore I need to revise the course and send it forward again for reapproval. But the reapproval would most likely mean that the revision comes into the next academic year.
And so is then there a challenge with evaluation education in the tertiary institutions that flexibility is not easy in terms of the design and the redesigning of courses to match the changing context. So that may be a challenge with
what I would say is, whenever I am designing a course, I do put as my final topic any other trending issue, and that allows me the flexibility to then teach something that is current and trending that I don't need to go back for approval. So I've started to do that in any courses that I am designing, the last final topic being any other trending issue. And I know for sure that I'm going to be revising some of those course contents once I settle down to look at the existing content and teach it for the first semester. So when I revise it, I will put that as the final topic, any other trending topic, because that gives me the flexibility to then address this issue where I could put in 1 or 2 topics in that final lecture that was not originally approved. But I think it's important for us to have that flexibility because things are changing constantly. And sometimes we cannot wait to have that long approval process, because this data collection issue with all the new ethical issues, etc., is something that really needs to be handled like overnight, you know, to really move forward.
Well, the one question I did not ask, and I will not ask now because I want to give Valerie time to just close off. It's just that question of coordination and harmonizing across universities in terms of curricula for evaluation. I know we didn't address it, but I just wondered, you know, what that would be like and if that was being considered. But that's something we can explore another time if we look at evaluation education, just to devote some more time to that topic. So thank you everyone for coming and joining. Thank you very much to panelists. I'd like to give our president, Valerie Gordon, a few minutes just to close the webinar because this is our last webinar for the week. Valerie.
Thank you very much, Lenise. I just want to add my thanks to the presenters here. We have had a buffet, a wonderful buffet of very important offerings, additions to our own thought process, things that we have to take into consideration, much like all of the offerings of this week, which, I'm sure we'll all agree, for those of us who have attended them, that they were very high caliber. Starting on Monday, we had the essential capacities necessary for young and emerging evaluators in a changing environment. Later in the evening on Monday, we had exploring the demand and support for M&E in the Caribbean region. That session was headlined by Ambassador Manorma Nandan of Deputy Secretary General of CARICOM, and a number of distinguished Caribbean development practitioners. Then we had innovative approaches to monitoring and evaluation in the Caribbean region. On Tuesday, Wednesday, monitoring and evaluation capacities to achieve the SDGs in a post-pandemic environment. And finally, today, the evaluation education, building a cadre of professionals for a post-pandemic Caribbean. So, the CEI really, and I know I can speak on behalf of the board and the membership, that we're overwhelmed with the willingness of all these experts to come and share with us. And everything that they offered has been very well received. We look forward to continuing the thought process, continuing to build a body of knowledge on evaluation practice in the region from myriad angles. You see, there's a lot to do. And we want to invite our Caribbean colleagues to join the CEI, become a part of the process, bring your skills on board, and let us work together to enhance the development process in the region. Because, as it has been said several times this week, there are a number of areas that are lacking, but we know that there are gaps that we can fill. So last but not least, I want to mention again the Sean Gray Membership Award for a young and emerging evaluator. The details will be up, I'm hoping, by tomorrow on the website, the application form. The objective of the award being to provide a membership to the CEI, a paid membership for a year to a young person interested in pursuing a career in evaluation. The intention is to encourage persons early in their evaluation career to become a premium member of the organization so as to benefit from its offerings and network connections. So the eligibility criteria and all of that will be available on the website. And so we hope that at least 1 or 2 persons will take up this offer. And for those of you who will respond to the call, our membership fees are very low, just $40 a year. Please join us and help us to move this process along. Thank you again, panelists. Thank you, moderator Baptiste. Thank you to the tech support and all participants. So it's my pleasure to close out this part of the evaluation week. Tomorrow, the members of CEI will get together, to discuss various different aspects of what we heard and issues moving forward. Thanks again.
Right, okay, she turned on. Very good. Sorry, I went on past 8 o'clock, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop scribbling in the beginning, and then I couldn't, just had to keep going, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, we are at the end of this week.
Lenise, we're still live. There's still participants in
Sorry,
the...
very sorry, very sorry. Sorry.
What's that?
No, she said there's still participants on. Yeah. Sorry, I can stop. Right, sorry, people, yeah.
Okay, so Lenise?
She's still on, Valerie, but there's still participants in the room.
So what are we doing? I'm not sure.
Oh, no, you can end it.
Oh, yeah, I thought I'd ended it, so. All right, so yes, to all participants, as I said, thank you so much for joining us. Many of you, I've seen a number of names pop up several times this week. So I'm hoping you benefited as much as all of the rest of us here. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to seeing you again, maybe as part of our membership, but certainly visit us on the website so you'll see what we're up to. Lenise has posted the website address there. So have a good evening to all. Stay safe and keep in touch.